As we close up this idea of gratitude and what it's all about, there's really one question that I want us to look at today, and that is the question, why is God so good? Why is God so good to us? We've looked at who he is and what he's done for us, but ultimately why? Why is he good as he is? Now, I understand that for some of you, that's not the question you're asking because you're still wrestling with, is God good? And I respect the fact that you feel that way. I understand that. You're not strange and you're not alone in that. Maybe you've experienced things in life that have caused you to question, is God actually good at all? You're looking around and thinking, if there is a God who is truly good, then he wouldn't have allowed this to happen, or he would not allow these things to be happening. Therefore, I'm not sure there is a good God. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're in this place. You are surrounded by a lot of people who have made the decision and understanding that God is good, but I'm glad you're here and wrestling through that. And before we jump into the why is God good, why is he so good to me, I want us to at least think on that possibility for a moment that some of you are struggling with. And I think some of it is really about how we perceive the world to be, how we perceive life to be. I think maybe at times we're looking at everything around us through a filter that is actually not real. Like the pictures that most of you post that magically have no more wrinkles or zits or issues and the lighting is perfect and all there's so much filtering going on. Am I the only one that looks at a picture and wonders what that person really looks like in person? Like, what do they really look like? If it took that much filtering to get that, okay, what are we really talking about? It's not just a woman thing, it's a man thing as well. So I'm not trying to say it's other people. But we have so much filtering going on, and I think at times we have filtered out our understanding of the world to the point where we think, how in the world could there be a good God if this beautiful creation, if this beautiful world that he made has gotten so messed up over time? And that's really not the question, and that's really not reality. If you're looking at it through that lens, that is a filter that is not true. It is not real. In the beginning, God created everything, and he called it good. Each day he created, and he said, this is good. Then he gets to creating the human race, created man and woman. So he creates man, he turns and says, this is good, doubly good, extra good. So creation as a whole, good. Man, good. Like everything is good. So yes, at that point in time, that filter would be accurate. Everything around, perfect. But when God created this good man and this good woman, he also gave them the ability to choose. The freedom to choose to serve and worship, love themselves, or to serve, worship, and love God. They chose themselves. And when they chose themselves, everything changed. And from that point forward, creation was no longer good as God had declared it earlier. And man was no longer good as he had declared as well. Everything was different. And at that point, death and dying and darkness all became reality for creation. So instead of looking at this perfect world and wondering how could it ever get messed up, from that point forward, there was a broken and dark, dying world. And the question is not, how could anything wrong ever happen to it? The bigger question is, how could anything good ever again come from this? Once we chose ourselves over God, we were walking away from the source of life and light. The result was death and darkness. It wasn't a punishment as much as a consequence. When we walk away from the source of light, we find darkness. When we walk away from the source of life, we find death. That's the way it works. That's the other side. And we chose that. And from that point forward, everything began to fall apart. Creation began to die. Creation began to fall apart. Literally, things began to decay and die, and flowers would fade, and all that. Natural disasters were happening around. Eventually, everything was falling apart. And the book of Romans says even creation is awaiting the salvation of the Lord. So even creation is affected here. So creation began to die. And like creation, man began to die on the outside, physically began to die. Eve turned to Adam at some point and said, use the filter on the phone on the next pic. Like I don't know what these things are in my eyes, but I've got bags, and when I smile, my mouth does weird things, and you have a gray hair, and where did that come from? And why are there hairs there at all? And what is going on? And everything began to fall apart, and death became a part of reality for God's creation that was once good. But this good creation was not just doubly good. Now it was in double trouble because it wasn't just a physical death like creation. Because unlike creation, God had created man and woman for more. So there was also a spiritual death happening. The soul that God placed within them, this eternity that God had in mind when he created man and woman, was now in complete destruction. And there was a divide, and man and woman were dying. So there's a spiritual death and a physical death. So everything is falling apart. So again, the question is not, how in the world could a good God allow little pockets of evil here and there to mess up his perfect world? The question is now, God, with this world of darkness and death in his hands, how could he ever bring anything good out of that again? But we know there are good things, because even the most cynical of you know there are some good things that happen to you. And we know from the book of James, it says that every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Every good gift, every good thing is coming from God. So we know there are good gifts. We know God is doing good things. But now we also are reminded that God is doing good things for people who have done nothing for him. And he's doing good things in a world and with people who have ruined it, who have walked away from it. Now, I cannot always speak for you. I understand that. I hate it when people say, I know how you feel about anything, because rarely do they ever know how you feel. We try. But I can't speak for you. But I know for me, when I look at God and say, how could you do this? I'm speaking from experience, because I know what God has said to do. I have read what God has instructed me to do. And the Creator has told me how to live. And I also know that I willfully, purposefully, and without hesitation throughout my life have had moments where I have said, God, I know you want me to do this, but I will not do it. I will do what I want to do. Or God, I know you've said that's off limits, but I'm going to do it anyway. And in every one of those moments of rebellion, I am in essence looking up to heaven and daring God to do anything about it. You're the maker. You made me, but I am going to defy you, and I'm going to dare you to do anything about it. From my perspective, if creation looks up at Creator and says no, then the Creator has every right. And I should expect the Creator just to wipe it off and start again. And yet somehow, God continues to be good to me. And this morning, I woke up to an alarm on a $1,000 smartphone, like most of you did. My phone's not fancy. I'm about 4 generations behind. I don't care. If you haven't looked at your bill, you're all buying $2,000 phones right now. So I've got this phone. It went off. I got up, stepped out of my warm bed, went to a full refrigerator, grabbed me some caffeine, walked into another room and sat down beside a lit up Christmas tree full of ornaments that remind me of all the good things God has done to me, year after year, memory after memory. I opened up that phone and hit my Bible app, and I casually and comfortably chose from hundreds of translations to find the one that I wanted to read. Translations for which other people died to get into my hands. And I read through it, and I closed it up. Walked into a closet full of clothes that I don't like, and I don't even remember buying. And I do what most men did. I found the 4 shirts that I wear and just picked one of those 4. In other words, I got online, looked at last week's service and said, which one did I wear last Sunday? And I went, don't get that one, get the next one. That is literally 3/4 of a shade differently, but it's the same shirt. I grabbed it, went into my bathroom, brushed my teeth, got in my car that I'd already preheated, of course, because I don't want to be uncomfortable on the way. Pulled in here, and now I and my wife, my kids get to spend our entire day serving you and telling you about Jesus. I don't deserve any of that. I don't deserve any of that experience, any of those memories, any of those gifts. And yet God continues day after day, gift after gift, to be so good to me. And the question I'm wrestling with is why? Why is God so good? When I have literally turned my back on him, I have disobeyed on purpose throughout my life. And yet he continues to be good. What is the deal? Well, in Psalm 8, there is a songwriter that I think is wrestling with a similar kind of question. And he says in verse 3 of that psalm, when I consider your heavens and the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. You have made them rulers over the works of your hands. You have put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds and the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, all that swim in the paths of the seas. Then in verse 9, he says, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all of the earth. He said, I look around at all that you made and how you allowed me as a human to rule over it, all the gifts that you've given me, and all I can say is, who are we that you would be so good to us? We don't deserve any of this. We bicker and complain about the smallest of things, but the truth is we don't deserve any of it. Who are we that you would think about us, that you would be so good to us? Well, I want us to look at one scripture from the Old Testament here in a moment, and then one from the New Testament that don't necessarily give ultimate answers, but help us understand, and they're keys to help us unlock why it is that God has been so good to us. Now, the first is in the book of Joshua. If you have a Bible, turn to there, or on your app, you can click on to Joshua chapter 4. God's people had a history of not being good back to the good God. And it got them in trouble. And there was a moment in Israel's history when God's people had found themselves in slavery as a result of disobedience and movement around and a rise in power of another country. And so they're in slavery for hundreds of years. God brought about a leader named Moses. Moses led them out. They got to the edge of this sea. There was an army coming behind them, and God parted the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, and they went across on dry land. Well, although God did that good thing for them, they quickly forgot about it. They began to complain, where's our food? Where's our water? God, why would you do this? Some of them even saying, we wish we would go back to Egypt and be slaves again because it's better than being out here. It was just a very, very ungrateful group of people. So as a result, they never got the next gift, which was the promised land, where what we know as Israel now. So they wandered around for 40 years until it was time. And then when it was time, God brought them again to the edge of water, and Joshua was their leader at that point. And just as Moses had done, Joshua prayed on their behalf, God moved on their behalf, and the Jordan River was parted, and they went across. Now, once they were across, Joshua knew that Moses, at that time with those people, had forgotten what God had done. And they abandoned their commitments to God. They were not good in return. They abused the gifts God had given them. So he said, I want every one of you from each tribe to take a large stone. And we're going to take 12 stones, one from each tribe, put them in the middle, and we're going to erect a monument so that generations, future generations, will know the goodness of God. And Joshua said to the people in verse 21, he said to them, in the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea, and when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. He said, God did all this. He did it in the past. He's going to do it again. I don't want us to forget this gift. And the reason God gave us this gift is so that the world will know the power of God, and so that we, his people, will live in fear of him. Those are the two reasons that Joshua understood. The reason for God's goodness to them, the reason for the gifts, was one public and another personal. The public, so that the world would know God's strength. And then personally, so that his own people would be in awe of him and know a fear of him, to never forget it as they move forward, to allow that to protect them, to allow that awe of God, that sense of wow, that sense of wonder in their relationship with God to guide them and to direct them, so that publicly people would look around and say, what in the world happened? And you have a chance to direct all the attention back to God. And then personally, so that you will never forget this moment. And it's a reminder to me that every time God does a great thing and gives you a gift, that there is a public component to that. It was never supposed to be private. That when God does a work in your life, in your family, whether it's relational or financial, whatever it may be, and other people take notice of that, it's your chance to be able to turn attention and say, it's not what I did, it's what God is doing in this moment. This is all credit, all due to God. I shared with you a few months ago, we were talking about prayer, that a part of my rhythm of prayer, when I get to the part when I'm asking God for things, after I've already thanked him for all he's done, I get to that part, I quote this, Joshua 4:24, so that the world will know your power, and so that I will fear you as I should. And then I continue on and ask the prayer, whatever it is. Lord, don't let Alabama catch that ball in the end zone, or whatever the thing is. Like, I just kind of share that. And that doesn't always work. It was late, but I pray that because I want to make sure that God knows that I know what he's doing and why he's doing it. That it's not just because I've backed him in a corner and I believe it, so you got to do it, God. It's ultimately because God has a purpose here. And it is to show the world his power and his strength, and so that it will remind me forever to walk in a fear of him, a healthy fear of him, a sense of awe. God, if you did that before, I know you can do that now. God, I want to put myself in a position where I experience that again, and so I want to honor you and be faithful in this moment. I want to show you how grateful I am. I never want to lose that sense of awe. It says, so that the world will know your power, so that my people will fear me as they should. So in essence, God's saying there's a public and there is a personal reason why I do these things. Now let's jump forward a few thousand years to a time when Jesus was teaching. Luke gives us an account of this particular message in Luke chapter 11. Jesus used a lot of illustrations and word pictures to help us understand things that are way beyond us. And he's doing it again here. And I know we could probably break up this little talk that Jesus is giving into a few different parts, but Luke put it all together. And so I think there's a reason there. Luke, even more than the other three gospel writers, tends to have more of a structure and a reason behind everything, not just to tell you the facts, but to say, I carefully investigated it. I wanted to put it all together in order. And in Luke chapter 11, verse 5, he begins a teaching that Jesus once gave. And it says, suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine is on a journey and has come to me, and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the one inside answers, don't bother me. The door is already locked. My children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. So, I say to you, and this is Jesus speaking, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be opened. Which of you fathers, if your son asks for a fish, will give him a snake instead? Or if he asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? Now, there's a lot there to unpack, and there's probably not time, and I don't have the wisdom and understanding to do it all. For one, why would the son ask his dad for an egg? But beside that, there's a lot of stuff there. But Jesus put it all together, and he's talking about a relationship between the one requesting and the one who can give. And he uses this idea of a friendship. He uses the idea of a father. And he puts them together in this piece and says, how much more will God? If your friend would give you a gift because you were so bold as to never leave and just stand on his front door and rap and knock and knock and knock and knock and knock. And if a father, an earthly father, who's not even pure, an evil father, knows better than to give his son something that's going to hurt him, he said, how much more will your heavenly Father do for you? And I think for us, the reason we can't get a handle on this idea of God being good to us is that many of you have decided that God just tolerates you, that he loves people, and he truly, genuinely loves a lot of other people, but he tolerates you. And I want you to know that you are so wrong. You are so off base. I understand why you feel that way, whether it is being pushed into the margins by the people that you trusted or loved, whether it was circumstances that you went through, or you're just feeling a lot of guilt and shame over decisions that you willfully, purposefully made, even though you knew they were wrong. I understand there could be a lot of different reasons why you feel that way. But Jesus is giving us a very clear reminder that that is not how God views you. That's not how he sees you, and that's not how he feels about you. God genuinely loves you. Most of us, when we approach God, we feel like we're bothering him. We feel like we're saying something that he already knows, so it's not very sincere. We feel like, what's the purpose anyway? It's not really going to make a difference. Or if it does make a difference, it's going to make a difference from other people, not people like me. There are others. There are people that are closer to him, people that he actually genuinely loves. And if I could get them to pray with me for this, maybe it will happen, because who am I? Who am I that God would listen to me and answer on my behalf? And Jesus is reminding those who were listening in that moment. And he's reminding us now, 2,000 years later, that is not the case. He genuinely loves you. And I don't know what else he could do other than to give the ultimate gift and to lay down his life so that you could have hope again. But that's exactly what he did. Your mistakes, your addiction, your embarrassment, your frustration, your disappointment, your failures, your secrets, all of those things are real and they are difficult, but it in no way makes it difficult for God to love you back. God has a love for you that you're never going to truly be able to emotionally understand. And at some point, you just have to say, I don't understand this. I don't see how you could, but I'm going to trust you, because if you were willing to die for me, then ultimately I'm going to assume that you knew who you were dying for, that you knew that I wasn't perfect, and you knew that I would mess things up. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, but you've been on the fringe and you've held back because you believe God tolerates you and God doesn't truly love you, then you have missed the mark. And if you are a follower of Jesus and somehow have convinced yourself that you have a closer seat up front because of the things you've done, and God gives you gifts based on as a reward more than anything else, you've missed it as well. It's never been about rewards. It's always been about the relationship that we have with him. As a friend, as our Father, he loves to do good things for you. They have a public effect. It's an opportunity for the world to look around and say, how did your marriage survive that? How did you get through that? How did you overcome that grief? How did you overcome that obstacle, that problem, that crutch? It's a chance for you to be able to give God all the glory for it and to shine in a dark and dying place. But it all begins with that relational component. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, I want to encourage you, challenge you, plead with you to let go of whatever it is you're holding on to be able to receive the free gift that he's given you.